High Commander Vexrath stood on the observation deck of the Dominion flagship, his 4 eyes fixed on the blue planet rotating slowly in the darkness of space. Earth. The humans called it Earth, such a simple name for a world that had caused so much trouble for the Galactic Dominion. Behind him, the door opened with a soft hiss. Sub-Commander Crix entered and stopped at the proper distance for a subordinate. Vexrath did not turn to look at him. He already knew what the report would say. "The attack on the northern continent has failed," Crix said. His voice was flat, but Vexrath could hear the fear hidden beneath the words. "General Thrax's forces have been destroyed. All 12,000 soldiers. Gone." Vexrath closed his secondary eyes. This was the 3rd major assault they had lost in 2 months. 12,000 elite soldiers, trained for 50 cycles in the art of war, wiped out by creatures who had only discovered space travel 300 years ago. "How?" Vexrath asked. The question was simple, but the answer never was when it came to humans. Crix shifted his weight from one leg to another. "Our intelligence said the area was defended by only 2,000 human soldiers. We had 6-to-1 advantage. Our weapons were superior. Our armor was stronger. We attacked at night when their vision is weakest." "And yet we lost," Vexrath said. "Yes, High Commander, the humans, they adapted." That word again. Adapted. It was becoming the most feared word in the Dominion military vocabulary. Vexrath had heard it so many times now that it made his stomach turn with cold anger. "Explain," he commanded. "When we attacked at night, they used devices that let them see in darkness. Thermal sensors, they call them. They saw our soldiers as clearly as if it were day. When we moved through the forest to stay hidden, they set the forest on fire. They burned their own land to stop us." Crix paused, his scales turning a pale shade that indicated extreme stress. "When our armor protected us from their bullets, they switched to explosives. When the explosives didn't work fast enough, they brought in machines called tanks. When our soldiers tried to retreat, the humans had already moved behind us. They had predicted our escape routes and blocked them all." Vexrath finally turned to face his subordinate. "In the space of one battle, they countered every advantage we had." "Yes, High Commander, and they did something else." Crix's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Some of our soldiers surrendered. They thought the humans would take them prisoner, as is custom among civilized species. The humans did take prisoners, but not before interrogating them on the battlefield. Within hours, they knew our communication codes, our reinforcement schedules, and the location of our supply lines." "Impossible. Our soldiers are trained to resist interrogation." "The humans did not torture them, High Commander. They talked to them, offered them food and medical care, treated their wounds. Some of our soldiers simply told them things, out of gratitude, I think." Vexrath felt something he had not felt in over a century of warfare. He felt uncertain. The Dominion had conquered 47 worlds. They had defeated species with superior technology, species with larger populations, species with natural weapons that made them dangerous in close combat. But none of those enemies had been like humans. He walked to the main console and called up the historical files on humanity. He had read these files many times, but he read them again now, searching for something he might have missed. Humans were weak. Their bodies were fragile. They had no natural armor, no claws, no venom. They could not see in the dark. They could not breathe underwater. They could not survive extreme temperatures. They were, by any measure, one of the most physically vulnerable intelligent species in the galaxy. And yet, Vexrath scrolled through the images. Humans climbing the highest mountains on their world. Humans diving to the deepest parts of their oceans. Humans living in frozen wastelands and burning deserts. Humans walking on their own moon, centuries before they had true space travel. "They should not have survived," Vexrath said quietly. "Their planet is full of predators. Their natural environment is hostile. They have no single biological advantage. How did they become the dominant species on their world?" Crix moved closer, curious despite his fear. Our scientists have studied this question, High Commander. The answer seems to be that humans change themselves. They build tools to compensate for their weaknesses. They alter their behavior to match new situations. They learn from every failure and apply those lessons immediately. Every species uses tools, Vexrath said dismissively. Not like humans, sir. Most species develop tools slowly over many generations. Humans develop new tools in the middle of a crisis. They invent solutions while the problem is still happening. Our scientists have a term for it. They call it real-time adaptation. Vexrath considered this. The Dominion military doctrine was built on careful planning. Every battle was analyzed for years before it was fought. Every variable was calculated. Every outcome was predicted. It was a system that had worked for thousands of years. But humans did not follow predictable patterns. They did not behave according to established military theory. They changed constantly, and they changed fast. "Show me the battle recordings," Vexrath ordered. Crix hesitated. "High Commander, I should warn you, the recordings are disturbing. I have seen war for longer than your entire family line has existed. Show me." The screen flickered to life. Vexrath watched as the initial attack unfolded perfectly. His soldiers moved through the darkness with precision, their night vision implants showing them a world of green and gray. The human base was ahead, barely defended. Then the first shots came, not from the base but from above. Human aircraft, flying so low they had avoided detection. The Dominion formation scattered. General Thrax's voice came over the recording. "Regroup at secondary position. Air support will handle the aircraft." But the Dominion air support never arrived. Vexrath watched as the recording showed why. The humans had launched rockets from hidden positions, destroying the Dominion aircraft before they could take off. "They knew exactly where our aircraft were stationed," Vexrath said. "How?" "We don't know, High Commander. Our best guess is that they used unmanned surveillance devices. Small flying machines they call drones. We found pieces of them after the battle." The recording continued. Vexrath watched his soldiers fight bravely, watched them fall back in good order, watched them follow every protocol for an organized retreat. And then he watched the humans appear behind them, cutting off escape routes that should have been safe. "How long from the start of the battle to the end?" Vexrath asked. 4 hours, High Commander." 4 hours. In 4 hours, 12,000 Dominion soldiers had been destroyed by a force 1/6 their size. In 4 hours, the humans had changed their tactics at least 7 times, each change perfectly countering a Dominion advantage. Vexrath turned off the recording. He stood in silence for a long moment, his 4 eyes staring at the dark screen. "Summon the War Council," he said finally. "We need to discuss a new approach to this war." Crix bowed. "What shall I tell them about our strategy, High Commander?" Vexrath looked back at the blue planet hanging in space. Somewhere down there, humans were already planning their next move, already adapting to whatever the Dominion might do next. "Tell them we are no longer fighting a normal enemy," Vexrath said. "Tell them we are fighting something we have never faced before, something that does not fight the same way twice, something that learns faster than any species we have ever encountered." He paused, feeling the weight of command heavier than it had ever been. "Tell them that our weapons are not the problem. Our soldiers are not the problem. The problem is that humans adapt, and if we do not find a way to match their adaptability, we will lose this war." The War Council gathered in the grand chamber of the flagship, a room designed to remind commanders of the glory of the Dominion. Banners from 47 conquered worlds hung from the ceiling, each one representing a species that had fallen before Dominion might. High Commander Vexrath looked at those banners and wondered if they would soon hang a 48th, or if this room would one day be a human trophy. 7 commanders sat at the curved table. Each controlled a sector of the invasion force. Each had their own reports of failure. Commander Zethral spoke first. He was the oldest of them, a veteran of 17 planetary conquests. My forces attempted to establish a beachhead on the southern continent 3 days ago. We chose a location with minimal human population. Rocky terrain, difficult for their vehicles. We thought it would be safe to build a forward base. What happened? Vexrath asked, though he already knew the answer would be some variation of the same story. The humans came by sea. We had not expected this. The terrain was coastal, yes, but the waters were cold and rough. Our analysis said no army would approach from that direction, but the humans did. Zethral's claws scraped against the table, a sign of deep frustration. They came in underwater vessels. They emerged from the ocean at night and attacked our base from a direction we had left undefended. Commander Vrex clicked her mandibles in what passed for bitter laughter among their species. Let me guess. When you adjusted to defend against naval attack, they changed their approach again. They launched attacks from the mountains we thought were impassable, Zethral confirmed. Humans climbed rock faces that our drones said could not be climbed. They carried weapons on their backs up vertical slopes. By the time we knew they were there, they had destroyed our communications array. Vexrath made a note on his data pad. This was a pattern he was seeing across all reports. The humans seemed to find impossible routes, impossible solutions, impossible victories. I have studied their history, said Commander Thox, the youngest at the table. He had been assigned as the invasion's chief strategist, a role that had become increasingly difficult. They have always been like this. Throughout their development as a species, they have faced challenges that should have destroyed them. Ice ages, plagues, wars among themselves that killed millions. Each time they adapted and survived. How does knowing their history help us defeat them? Vrex demanded. It helps us understand why our traditional methods fail, Thox replied. We are used to enemies who respond to pressure by following their established patterns more rigidly. When we threaten them, they do what they have always done, just more desperately. But humans respond to pressure by abandoning their patterns entirely. They invent new approaches. They experiment during active combat. I have seen this myself, said Commander Vosk. He was missing his left arm, a wound he had received in the first week of the invasion. My soldiers captured a human military base. We expected to find plans, strategies, organizational charts, things we could use to predict their next moves. Do you know what we found instead? The room was silent. We found boards covered in paper and string. They called them brainstorming boards. Each one was covered in ideas, some sensible and some completely insane. Ideas for new weapons, new tactics, new ways to attack us. And the humans were constantly adding new ideas, crossing out old ones, combining different approaches. Vosk shook his head slowly. They were not following a master plan. They were creating the plan as they went. Vexrath felt a chill run through his body. This was the fundamental difference, he realized. The Dominion planned everything in advance. Their strength came from order, from structure, from predictability. They knew exactly what they would do in every situation because they had planned for every situation. But humans did not need to plan for every situation. They could create plans on the spot, in the chaos of battle, under conditions that would paralyze any other species with uncertainty. There is something else, said Commander Keth. She had been quiet until now, her long neck bent in thought. I have been analyzing the humans we have captured, studying how they think, how they make decisions. I discovered something that I believe is important. Speak, Vexrath commanded. Humans have a word. They call it creativity. At first, I thought this was just their term for problem solving, but it is more than that. Creativity for humans is the ability to imagine things that do not exist, to combine existing ideas in ways that have never been tried, to see possibilities where there appear to be none. All intelligent species can imagine, Zethral said. Not like humans, Keth replied. I gave the captured humans a test. I showed them a simple object, a cylinder of metal, and asked them to list all the things it could be used for. Our species, when given this test, typically produces 8 to 12 answers. The Thraxians produce 6 to 10. The Velori produce 15 to 20. And the humans, Vexrath asked. The average human produced 47 answers. One human produced over 100, and many of their answers were things I would never have considered, uses that seemed absurd until the human explained the logic behind them. Keth's eyes met Vexrath's directly. They do not think like us, High Commander. Their minds work in patterns we cannot predict because those patterns do not follow logical structure. The chamber fell into heavy silence. Outside the viewports, Earth continued its rotation, peaceful from this distance. It was hard to believe that such a beautiful world contained such dangerous creatures. So what do we do? Vrex finally asked. If we cannot predict them, if we cannot outthink them, if they adapt faster than we do, how do we defeat them? Vexrath had been considering this question since the first major defeat. He had run countless simulations, consulted with the best strategic minds in the Dominion, and studied every piece of intelligence about humanity. He had found only one possible answer, and it was an answer that went against everything the Dominion believed in. We must change our approach entirely, he said. We have been fighting this war as we have always fought wars. We develop a plan, we execute the plan, and we expect the enemy to react to our plan. But the humans do not react. They create. They innovate. They turn our strengths into weaknesses by approaching problems from angles we never considered. What are you suggesting, High Commander? Zethral asked warily. I am suggesting that we stop trying to predict the humans. Instead, we must become more like them. We must learn to adapt in real time. We must encourage our soldiers to think creatively, to abandon protocols when the situation demands it, to experiment during battle. The reaction was immediate and negative. Several commanders spoke at once, their voices rising in protest. That goes against every principle of Dominion warfare. Our soldiers are not trained for this. Chaos in the ranks will lead to disaster. Vexrath held up one clawed hand for silence. I understand your concerns. What I am proposing is radical. It challenges everything we have known for thousands of years. But consider this. We have tried our traditional methods against the humans and we have failed. Every time we execute a perfect plan, the humans find a way around it. Our discipline becomes predictability. Our structure becomes a cage. He gestured toward the banners hanging above them. Those 47 worlds were conquered because their defenders fought the way they had always fought. They were predictable. We knew their patterns and we exploited those patterns. But we have no patterns for the humans because the humans have no patterns. They change with every engagement. Commander Thox leaned forward. High Commander, I support this proposal in principle, but I must ask, can our soldiers actually learn to think this way? Creativity and adaptation are not skills that can be trained overnight. The humans have been developing these abilities for their entire existence as a species. We would be trying to learn in months what they have perfected over millennia. You are correct, Vexrath admitted. We cannot match them immediately, but we can begin the process. We can create special units that are given freedom to experiment. We can reward soldiers who find innovative solutions instead of punishing them for deviation from protocol. We can study human tactics and train our officers to anticipate the unexpected. And in the meantime, Vrex asked, while we are learning to be creative, the humans will continue to adapt and defeat us. Vexrath nodded slowly. Yes. In the meantime, we will continue to lose battles. We will suffer defeats that would have been unthinkable against any other enemy. But we will also learn from each defeat. We will study how the humans outmaneuvered us, and we will incorporate those lessons into our training. He looked at each commander in turn. I am not asking you to like this approach. I am telling you that it is our only hope. The alternative is to continue as we have been, watching our forces be systematically destroyed by an enemy that treats war like an art form. The silence that followed was different from before. It was not the silence of shock or protest. It was the silence of commanders accepting an uncomfortable truth. "I will implement your orders," Zethral said finally, "but I want it recorded that I believe this strategy carries enormous risk." "The record will show your objection," Vexrath assured him. "But the record will also show what happens if we follow this path. Either we will learn to adapt, or we will be remembered as the Dominion that was defeated by a species that should not have been able to defeat us." The meeting ended, but the questions remained. As the commanders departed to their various commands, Vexrath remained alone in the great chamber, staring at those 47 banners and wondering if he was about to lead his people to their greatest victory or their first true defeat. 6 months passed. 6 months of battle, of adaptation, of learning. On Earth, the war continued to rage, but something was changing. Vexrath could see it in the reports that crossed his desk, could feel it in the subtle shift of confidence among his officers. The Dominion forces were beginning to adapt. It had not been easy. The first month had been disastrous. Soldiers, suddenly freed from strict protocols, had made terrible decisions. Units had fragmented, communications had broken down, and the humans had exploited the chaos. Vexrath had nearly abandoned the strategy after losing an entire division to what should have been a minor skirmish. But then slowly, things began to improve. It started with a young officer named Trelver. Her unit had been pinned down by human snipers in a ruined city. Standard protocol would have called for reinforcements and a systematic advance. But Trelver did something unexpected. She ordered her soldiers to strip the armor from their dead comrades and use it to create mobile shields. Then, instead of advancing toward the snipers, she led her unit in a wide circle, approaching from the direction the humans had left unguarded. The humans, expecting a frontal assault, were caught off guard. For the first time in months, a Dominion unit had surprised the enemy. Trelver's tactics spread rapidly through the Dominion forces, not the specific technique, but the idea behind it. Soldiers began to realize that they could think for themselves, that they could find solutions that were not in any training manual. The fear of punishment for deviation faded as commanders rewarded innovation instead of punishing it. Vexrath watched all of this with growing hope and growing concern. Hope because his strategy was working. Concern because he knew the humans would adapt to this adaptation. He was right to be concerned. The human response came 3 months into the new strategy. Vexrath was studying battle reports when Commander Keth burst into his quarters without announcement, something that had never happened before. "High Commander, the humans have done something unprecedented." Vexrath set down his data pad. "Tell me." "They have captured one of our adaptation units, the one led by Sub-Commander Vrextai. Instead of killing the soldiers or taking them prisoner, the humans studied them." Keth's voice was strained. "They interviewed every survivor. They recorded how our soldiers thought, how they made decisions, how they adapted during battle, and then they released them." Vexrath felt ice form in his chest. "They released them. Why?" "Because they wanted us to know that they know. High Commander, the humans have analyzed our new approach. They understand that we are trying to become more like them, and they are using that understanding against us." "How?" Keth pulled up a holographic display. It showed a battle from 3 days ago, one that Vexrath had not yet reviewed. "Watch the human tactics here. See how they responded when our unit attempted an unexpected flanking maneuver." Vexrath watched. The Dominion unit had executed a perfect adaptation, approaching from an angle that no standard military doctrine would predict. But the humans had been ready. They had anticipated the unexpected move and had prepared a counter. "They knew we would try something creative," Vexrath said slowly. "So they planned for creativity itself. They prepared responses not to specific tactics, but to the general approach of trying to surprise them." "Exactly, High Commander. The humans have adapted to our adaptation. They are now planning for unpredictability. They have created response teams that specialize in reacting to novel situations. Every time one of our units tries something new, these teams analyze the approach and develop counters within hours. Vexrath was silent for a long moment. He walked to the viewport and looked down at Earth, now much closer than it had been 6 months ago. The Dominion had established several permanent bases on the surface, but they held only a fraction of the territory they had expected to control by now. "It is like fighting water," he said finally. "Every time we push, it flows around us. Every time we think we have found solid ground, it shifts." "There is more," Keth said. "The humans have begun sharing information in ways we did not expect. Their different nations, which were fighting among themselves before our arrival, have now unified completely. All of their knowledge, all of their tactics, all of their innovations are shared instantly across the entire planet. When one human unit discovers a weakness in our approach, every human unit knows about it within hours." "They were divided before we came?" Vexrath asked. "Deeply divided. Their history is full of wars between their own nations, terrible conflicts that killed millions, but our invasion has united them. They call it coming together against a common threat. Our presence has turned their greatest weakness into their greatest strength." Vexrath considered this. The Dominion had faced unified enemies before, but those unifications had always been fragile, held together only by fear. Internal divisions always re-emerged when the pressure decreased. But the humans seemed different. Their unity did not appear to be temporary or forced. They had genuinely come together, setting aside ancient hatreds and rivalries to face the Dominion as one species. "What do our spies report about their internal situation?" Vexrath asked. "That is another concern, High Commander. The humans have developed sophisticated counterintelligence methods. They have identified and captured most of our agents. Those they have not captured have reported something disturbing. The humans are not just fighting us. They are learning from us." "Explain." "They are studying our technology, our biology, our culture. They are incorporating what they learn into their own capabilities. Our captured weapons are being reverse-engineered. Our armor is being analyzed for weaknesses. Our tactics, even our new adaptive tactics, are being documented and studied in their military academies." Keth paused. "High Commander, the humans are not just fighting a war. They are conducting a research project. They are using this conflict to improve themselves." Vexrath had thought he understood human adaptability. He had thought it was simply a fast reaction speed, a ability to change tactics quickly. But what Keth was describing was something far more profound. The humans were treating the entire war as a learning opportunity. Every battle, whether won or lost, was a lesson. Every Dominion soldier killed or captured was a source of information. Every weapon used against them was a technology to be studied and improved upon. They were not just defending their world. They were becoming something more than they had been before the invasion. "Call another War Council meeting," Vexrath ordered. "We need to discuss this new development." "Yes, High Commander, but I must tell you something first." Keth's voice dropped. "Several of the commanders have been discussing alternatives to the current strategy. Some of them are suggesting that we should consider the unthinkable." "What alternative?" "Total planetary bombardment. Destroying the humans from orbit rather than trying to conquer them on the ground." Vexrath turned sharply. "That is not the Dominion way. We conquer, we do not exterminate. The species we defeat become part of the Dominion, adding their strengths to our collective power." "I know, High Commander, but some commanders argue that the humans are different. They say that humans cannot be incorporated into the Dominion because they will never stop fighting. They will never accept subjugation. Every human, no matter how defeated, would continue to resist, to adapt, to find new ways to undermine our rule. And so they suggest we destroy them entirely. They suggest we consider it as an option, High Commander. A last resort if conventional conquest proves impossible." Vexrath looked back at the blue planet. He thought about the 47 species that lived under Dominion rule, each one adding something unique to the whole. The Thraxians with their engineering skills, the Velori with their mathematical minds, the Kethril with their ability to survive in hostile environments. What would the humans add to the Dominion? Their creativity, their adaptability, their relentless drive to overcome every obstacle. Or would they add only chaos, only resistance, only endless, exhausting conflict? Set up the War Council meeting, Vexrath said finally. We will discuss all options, but I want it made clear that planetary bombardment remains a last resort. The humans may be our most difficult enemy, but that does not mean we should abandon our principles. Yes, High Commander. Keth departed, leaving Vexrath alone with his thoughts. He stood at the viewport for a long time, watching Earth rotate slowly in the darkness, thinking about a species that refused to be predictable, refused to be defeated, refused to stop changing. And somewhere in his mind, a small voice whispered a question he did not want to face. What if the humans could not be conquered at all? The War Council meeting was the most heated Vexrath had ever witnessed. Commanders who had served together for centuries now argued with bitter intensity, their voices rising and falling in waves of accusation and defense. We have lost 40% of our invasion force, Commander Vrex stated, her mandibles clicking with barely controlled anger. 40%, against a species that had never fought an interstellar war before our arrival. This is not a difficult conquest. This is a disaster. The losses are within acceptable parameters for a prolonged campaign, Commander Thox countered. We knew this would take time. The humans are unlike any enemy we have faced. That is exactly the problem. Vrex slammed her clawed hand on the table. They are unlike any enemy. Our entire military doctrine is based on predictable enemies. We cannot defeat the unpredictable. Commander Zethril raised a hand for attention. I have served the Dominion for longer than most of you have been alive. I have seen enemies who seemed invincible fall before our might, but I have never seen anything like the humans. Every time we develop a new approach, they counter it within days. Every time we find a weakness, they eliminate it. They are learning faster than we are. Then we must accelerate our own learning, Thox said. High Commander Vexrath's strategy is working. Our soldiers are becoming more adaptive. We are making progress. Progress toward what? Vrex demanded. Victory? I see no path to victory here. The humans control most of their planet. Our bases are isolated strongholds constantly under attack. We cannot expand, we can barely hold what we have. This is not progress. This is stalemate at best. Vexrath had remained silent during the argument, observing his commanders, measuring their positions. Now he spoke. Commander Vrex, you mentioned the possibility of planetary bombardment at our last meeting. Do you still support that option? The room went quiet. This was the question everyone had been avoiding. Vrex met Vexrath's gaze directly. I believe it is an option we must seriously consider. The humans cannot be conquered by conventional means. Perhaps they cannot be conquered at all. If we cannot add them to the Dominion, then we must at least neutralize them as a threat. You would destroy an entire species. I would protect the Dominion from a species that could eventually threaten our existence. Look at how fast they are progressing. Before we arrived, they had primitive space technology. Now they are studying our ships, our weapons, our methods. Give them another century, another millennium, and what will they become? How long before they develop the capability to threaten us in return? Commander Vosk, who had lost his arm in the early days of the invasion, spoke for the first time. I have fought the humans in close combat. I have seen them die. They are brave, yes, and clever, but they are also capable of great fear and great error. They are not invincible. No one is suggesting they are invincible, Vrex replied. I am suggesting that the cost of defeating them is higher than the value of the victory. How many more soldiers must we lose? How many more resources must we spend? The Dominion has responsibilities to other worlds, other species. We cannot pour everything into one planet, no matter how strategically valuable it might be. Vexrath considered her words. They were not unreasonable. The Dominion did have other concerns, other enemies watching from the shadows, waiting for signs of weakness. A prolonged, costly war against the humans could invite aggression from rivals. But there was another consideration, one that Vexrath had not yet shared with his commanders. "I want to show you something," he said. He activated the central display, and a three-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared. This is the current state of the Dominion. 47 conquered worlds, 12 vassal states, approximately 400 billion subjects. The commanders nodded. They knew these numbers well. "Now look at this." Vexrath adjusted the display and new data appeared. Lines of different colors spread across the map, representing trade routes, military movements, resource flows. This is the Dominion as it exists now. Stable, organized, efficient. Every world in its place, every species performing its designated role. He changed the display again. "And this is a projection of where we could be in 100 years if we incorporate the humans into the Dominion." The new display showed something very different. The lines of trade and movement had multiplied. New routes extended into unexplored regions. The number of worlds had increased dramatically. "What are we looking at?" Zethral asked. "This is an analysis I commissioned from our best strategic planners. They studied human capabilities, human potential, and human history. Their conclusion is that if we can successfully incorporate the humans into the Dominion, they would become our most valuable asset." "How so?" Thox leaned forward with interest. "The humans have something no other species in the Dominion possesses. They have adaptability combined with ambition. They do not just react to challenges. They seek out challenges. They explore, they expand, they create. Every species we have conquered has eventually settled into a stable role within the Dominion. But the humans would never be stable. They would always be pushing boundaries, finding new solutions, driving the Dominion forward." "You make them sound like an asset rather than a threat," Vrex said skeptically. "That is exactly my point. The same qualities that make them difficult to conquer would make them invaluable once conquered. Their creativity, their adaptability, their refusal to accept limitations. These traits have been used against us in this war, but imagine if they were used for us." Vosk rubbed his injured arm thoughtfully. "High Commander, I understand your reasoning, but how do you propose we conquer them if they cannot be conquered? You cannot incorporate a species that refuses to submit." "That is where I must share another piece of information," Vexrath said. "Something that came to my attention 3 days ago. Commander Keth, please present your findings." Keth stood and activated her own display. "As you know, I have been studying the humans extensively, particularly their psychological and social patterns. I discovered something that I believe changes everything." The display showed recordings of human settlements, both military and civilian. "The humans are not a unified species in the way we assumed. Yes, they have united against us, but their unity is superficial. Beneath the surface, they remain deeply divided. Different cultures, different values, different interests. Their alliance against us is strong, but it is also temporary." "We know this," Vrex said impatiently. "It does not help us. Their temporary alliance is enough to defeat our forces." "True, but consider what would happen if we changed our approach. Instead of trying to conquer Earth by force, what if we offered a different relationship?" The room fell silent. This was unexpected. "What are you suggesting?" Zethral asked carefully. Keth looked at Vexrath, who nodded for her to continue. "The humans fear us, but they also respect strength. They admire capability, and they are deeply interested in the wider galaxy. What if, instead of forcing them into submission, we offered them partnership?" "Partnership?" Vrex's voice was incredulous. The Dominion does not form partnerships. We conquer or we ignore. Those are our only options. Perhaps those options are no longer sufficient, Vexrath said quietly. The humans have shown us something important. They have shown us that our traditional methods have limits. We cannot conquer them by force. We cannot predict them. We cannot outthink them, but perhaps we can work with them. He stood and walked to the viewport. I have been commanding this invasion for almost a year now. In that time, I have developed something I never expected to develop: respect. Respect for the humans and what they have accomplished. They have taken everything we have thrown at them and survived. More than survived. They have grown stronger. Respect does not win wars, Vrex said. No, but perhaps it can end them. Vexrath turned back to face his commanders. I am proposing that we open negotiations with the humans, that we offer them a place in the galaxy not as conquered subjects, but as partners, not beneath us but beside us. The reaction was mixed. Some commanders looked horrified, others looked thoughtful. Zethril spoke first. The Dominion Council would never approve such an arrangement. It goes against every tradition, every principle of our civilization. Perhaps, Vexrath agreed. But the Dominion Council is not here. They have not fought this war, have not seen what the humans can do. We have. And we must decide what recommendation to make. Do we recommend continued warfare at costs that may break our military? Do we recommend extermination, which would waste the potential of an extraordinary species? Or do we recommend something new, something that has never been tried, because we face a species unlike any other? He let the question hang in the air. The decision they made here in this room would determine the future of two civilizations. The message was transmitted to Earth on a frequency the humans had learned to monitor. It was simple, direct, and unprecedented in Dominion history. This is High Commander Vexrath of the Galactic Dominion. We request a meeting with your leaders to discuss terms. Not terms of surrender, but terms of peace. We believe both our species have something to offer each other. The response came 3 days later, longer than Vexrath had expected. The humans were cautious, understandably so. They had been fighting for their survival for almost a year. Trust would not come easily. But the response came, and it was positive. The meeting was held on neutral ground, an island in the middle of a vast ocean. The humans chose the location, and Vexrath agreed without objection. It was a gesture of good faith, showing that the Dominion was willing to operate on human terms for once. Vexrath descended from his shuttle with a small delegation. Commander Keth was with him, as was Commander Thox. The others had remained in orbit, ready to respond if this was a trap. Vexrath did not believe it was a trap, but he understood the need for precaution. The human delegation was waiting. There were 5 of them, representing different nations and different roles. The one who stepped forward to greet Vexrath was a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. Her name, according to Dominion intelligence, was Director Chen. She was one of the architects of human resistance. "High Commander," she said. Her voice was calm, controlled. "I admit I never expected to have this conversation." "Neither did I," Vexrath replied. "Your species has a way of creating unexpected situations." A small smile crossed her face. "I will take that as a compliment." They moved to a simple structure that the humans had built for the meeting. It was a white tent, open on all sides with a table and chairs in the center. Symbolic, Vexrath thought, transparency, openness. The humans were sending a message about how they wanted to be treated. "Before we begin," Director Chen said, "I want to understand something. You have been trying to conquer us for a year. Your forces have killed millions of our people. Why should we trust any offer you make now?" It was a fair question. Vexrath had prepared for it. "You should not trust us," he said. "Trust must be earned, and we have done nothing to earn it. What I can offer you is honesty. The truth is that we cannot conquer you. We have tried everything in our considerable arsenal, and you have adapted to all of it. We could continue to fight, and many more would die on both sides, but the outcome would not change. You would survive. You would resist. Eventually, we would be forced to withdraw or commit atrocities that would shame the Dominion for generations. Atrocities, another human spoke, a man in military uniform. You mean planetary bombardment? Yes, it was discussed. Some of my commanders advocated for it. I rejected the option. Why? Vexrath paused, considering how to answer. Because destroying you would be a waste. Your species has qualities that the Dominion lacks, qualities we did not even know we lacked until we encountered you. You adapt faster than any species we have ever met. You create solutions to problems that have never been solved before. You turn defeats into learning opportunities. These are not qualities to be destroyed. They are qualities to be valued. Director Chen exchanged glances with her colleagues. You want to add us to your empire? No, Vexrath said, surprising even himself with the clarity of his response. We wanted to add you to our empire. That was our original intention. But we have learned that you cannot be added in the way other species have been added. You would never accept a subordinate role. You would resist, sabotage, rebel. The cost of holding you down would eventually exceed the benefit of having you. Then what do you want? A partnership, an alliance. Two civilizations working together, each contributing its strengths. The Dominion has resources, technology, and access to a galactic network that spans hundreds of worlds. Humanity has adaptability, creativity, and a drive to explore and expand that we have never seen before. Together, we could accomplish things that neither of us could accomplish alone. The human delegation was silent for a long moment. Vexrath could see them thinking, evaluating, analyzing. They were doing what humans always did. They were adapting to a new situation. What would this partnership look like? Director Chen asked, specifically. That would be negotiated, but the broad outline would be this. Humanity would have access to Dominion space. You would be able to travel, trade, and settle on worlds throughout the galaxy. In exchange, you would contribute your unique capabilities to shared projects, scientific research, exploration of unknown regions, problem-solving for challenges that have defeated other species. And the Dominion would stop trying to conquer us. If we reach an agreement, yes, your world would be yours. Your governments, your cultures, your ways of life would be protected. We would not interfere in your internal affairs. Why should we believe that? Vexrath thought carefully before responding. Because interfering in your internal affairs would be pointless. You have shown us that you cannot be controlled. Any attempt to dominate you would fail. We are practical beings, Director Chen. We pursue outcomes that work. Conquering you does not work. Partnering with you might. The military officer leaned forward. And if we refuse, if we tell you to leave our solar system and never return, then we will leave, Vexrath said simply. We will establish a perimeter around your system and wait. Eventually, you will venture out. Your species is not content to stay in one place. You will explore, and when you do, you will encounter the wider galaxy. At that point, we would prefer to meet you as allies rather than as former enemies. Director Chen nodded slowly. You have thought this through. I have had many months of defeats to think about it. Nothing clarifies the mind like repeated failure. A strange sound came from Vexrath's throat, something that might have been laughter. Your species has taught me things about warfare that I did not learn in a century of conquest. You have taught me that the strongest enemy is not the one with the best weapons or the largest army. The strongest enemy is the one that refuses to be predicted. Is that why you fear us? Director Chen asked. Because you cannot predict us. Vexrath considered the question. Fear was not a word that Dominion commanders used lightly, but he had learned something about honesty in his dealings with humans. Yes, he admitted. I fear you, not because you are stronger than us or more advanced than us. I fear you because you are different in a way that makes you dangerous. Your adaptability is not a skill. It is a fundamental part of what you are. Every other species we have encountered has limits, patterns, predictable behaviors. You do not. You change constantly. You become whatever you need to become. And that makes you the most formidable enemy the Dominion has ever faced. He paused, then added, "It also makes you potentially the most valuable ally the Dominion could have. The same qualities that make you dangerous to your enemies would make you invaluable to your friends." The negotiations continued for many hours, then many days. Details were discussed, terms were argued, compromises were reached. It was not easy. Both sides had grievances, both sides had demands, and both sides had pride that had to be managed carefully. But eventually, an agreement was reached. The treaty was called the Compact of Earth, and it was unlike any agreement the Dominion had ever made. Humanity would remain independent, governing itself according to its own traditions and values. But humanity would also have a place in the galactic community, access to knowledge and technology that would accelerate its development by centuries. In exchange, humanity would contribute to joint projects with the Dominion. Scientific research, exploration, problem-solving. The humans would bring their unique perspective to challenges that had stymied other species for generations. On the day the treaty was signed, Vexrath stood with Director Chen on the observation deck of the Dominion flagship. Below them, Earth rotated peacefully. Above them, stars glittered in the infinite darkness. "You know," Director Chen said, "there will be those on Earth who will never trust you, who will always see this treaty as a trap. I expect so, just as there are those in the Dominion who will never accept humans as equals. Change comes slowly to ancient civilizations." Vexrath turned to look at her. "But change does come. That is perhaps the most important lesson your species has taught us. Nothing is permanent. Everything adapts or dies. Even the mighty Dominion. Especially the mighty Dominion. We had become complacent, Director, set in our ways. We believed that our methods were perfect because they had worked for so long. You showed us that perfection is an illusion, that even the best systems must evolve or be defeated by those who evolve faster." Director Chen smiled, "And now we will evolve together. Perhaps, or perhaps you will outgrow us eventually. Your species has a way of exceeding expectations." Vexrath looked back at Earth. "In 100 years, 1,000 years, who knows where humanity will be? You may become the dominant power in the galaxy. You may explore regions of space that we have never reached. You may solve problems that have puzzled us for millennia. That does not worry you. It would have worried me a year ago. Now I find it exciting. The galaxy has been stable for too long. It needs something to shake it up, to push it in new directions. I think humanity might be exactly what the galaxy needs." They stood together in silence, two commanders who had been enemies and were now something else. Not quite friends, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of something that could become friendship. Below them, on the blue planet, billions of humans were beginning to look up at the stars with new eyes. They were no longer just defenders of their world. They were participants in a galactic civilization, partners in an adventure that would span centuries and galaxies. And somewhere in the halls of the Dominion War Academy, the records of the human war were being studied by young officers. The conclusion of those records had become famous throughout the Dominion, repeated in training sessions and strategic discussions. The humans cannot be defeated by superior weapons or superior numbers. They cannot be predicted by models or contained by strategies. They adapt to every challenge, overcome every obstacle, and emerge stronger from every defeat. They are, in every way that matters, the most dangerous species the Dominion has ever encountered. And that is why they must be our partners rather than our subjects. For an enemy that adapts faster than you can plan will eventually defeat you. But an ally that adapts faster than anyone else can plan will help you accomplish things you never dreamed possible." The report was signed by High Commander Vexrath, and it became required reading for every Dominion officer who hoped to understand the new galaxy they lived in. A galaxy where humanity had taken its place among the stars. A galaxy that would never be the same.